Welcome to the Past Life Awakening Institute podcast. I'm Mark Beal, a past life regression therapist and trainer. If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training, go to my pastlifeawakeninginstitute.com website for detail. Thanks for watching and enjoy this episode. Welcome, Karen. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So this is Karen Monster Peters. She's a psychologist, life coach, and energy healer. She's the founder of the Vibrant Sensitive Movement, an online wellness practice. She's got a master's degree in psychology from Radboud University in the Netherlands, and she's certified in various forms of hypnosis. She specialized in giftedness, child development, parenting, and highly sensitive people. She's helped over 700 clients over the past 10 years in this specialty. You can find her at her Facebook group, The Vibrant Sensitive, with over 6,500 members, and her website is thevibrantsensitive.com. The links to her YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn are all in the description. She guides men and women into deeper awareness and deep healing. She uses many energy healing modalities and techniques. She says her greatest tool is her intuition and her natural healing ability that she says she's been perfecting through many lifetimes. So that really resonates with us at the Past Life Awakening Institute podcast. And she's also studied some of my courses and is interested in things like hypnosis, NLP, past life regression, between lines. So welcome to the podcast, the podcast for the Past Life Awakening Institute. Great to see you.
It's great to be here. I'm so honored and excited, and so excited.
Cool. So a lot of questions arise from, amazing background, so many things you've done. And we can get to that. What's a sensitive, your healer's path, how you went from the scientific to the spiritual, your past lifetimes, a lot to talk about. In fact, so much that we've planned 2 podcasts. So today we're going to focus on the professional life, being a psychologist, the kind of people, a specific group that you work with, highly sensitives. You can find out a lot about that. That's a diagnostic term, and a lot of clinical research has been done on that area. So we can find out what those terms means, just in definitions and in terms of how people work with it and the modalities they choose. And we can look at some of the case studies and new methodologies, as Karen runs a lot of programs to help people for over a couple of days, over months, over years. So some really interesting things there. And then we're going to have another podcast where we look at more from a personal perspective, the kind of life that you've lived and how that shaped you as a healer, and the way that you're really, walking the talk and demonstrating that. I think a lot of people will benefit from seeing the healer's path that you've come up with, and the congruence with which you go through things to this day. So we can get started and just break it down a bit. So interested to start with your psychological background and your training as a psychologist. So you graduated in 2004, I believe.
Yes.
But can you tell us about that journey? How did you find your psychology training?
Well, basically, I was pregnant, and I was studying cultural anthropology first, and I realized, and I loved it. I mean, I love cultures, I love travel, I love, I just love people, and I love the understanding of societies and how we're formed, right? I think that's been a love that I've had my whole life, and probably in a few lifetimes as well. But I got pregnant, and I realized, if I'm going to do this job, an anthropologist has to travel a lot.
Okay.
And I couldn't be doing that with a baby. So I was pretty pragmatic when I just took a guide. And I was just like, what am I going to do now? So I switched my studies to psychology, orthopedagogiek, which is a Dutch study. You cannot find that anywhere else in the world under that name, which is developmental and educational child psychology. So you will do that for your full 4 or 5 years, and then by the end, you will also have your master's. So it's very complete study of child educational, parenting, development, etc. So that's how I actually got into it. And in the first month, I was like, of course course I'm doing this. Like, it just fit so well.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, so I was starting to study psychology, then I had a baby, and that interrupted my learning of psychology. I'm like, wait a second, people are reading books about childhood development, and you're like living it day to day. So
Yeah.
what a great experiential way to really understand what's going on.
Exactly. I even remember getting a few questions right in a few exams just because I had experienced that. And that most people like, I had no idea. Oh my God. I'm like, I went through that. So that was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so interesting the way I think every healer's personal experiences, we've got to listen to those rather than like, oh,
Yeah.
that was a distraction. My life should have done this, but then that happened and it got in the way. No, it didn't. It
It
was
didn't.
it was there to
It
tell
was
you
a
something.
perfect fit. Yeah. It was a perfect fit. And basically, I only took, I think I did 1 year in 2 years. When my daughter was around 1 year old, I needed to take a little bit of not a break, but it had to be a little bit slower because she had chronic ear infection. So I was like, I'm going to go crazy here. Let me take, so I did the second year in 2 years, but I loved the whole study. It was exactly what I needed and wanted to do at that moment in my life. For sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And did you resonate with the kind of training that you were getting at that time, like the scientific approach and the way that it was?
Yeah, I was very much in a scientific mode back then. I was such a scientist. I was raised, my father was such a geologist, statistician. He was, my dad was not religious at all, or spiritual. He was very much against everything. And in the sense that he was raised in a very Protestant family. He had to go to church 3 times a week. So he knew his stuff. He was very, very, very educated and very much about, if the Mormons would show up at the door, he would invite them in, say, okay, give me the pamphlets, I'll read it, you come back tomorrow. So that type of person. So he knew his stuff, but he didn't believe in anything more.
What about you? Did you have a spiritual
Oh, I
consciousness at that
did.
time?
I did. I was very, very much always sensing that there was something more. So he would just like laugh at me a little bit, just like, that's just you. But I always had that sixth sense that even as a child, which was something that came up in the Past Lives for Healer course that you have, me sitting on a swing and really communicating with something bigger than me, and just knowing that I was being heard.
Okay.
And I knew it, and I could feel it in my whole body.
Well, that's good. If you feel like you're not being heard by your dad, but you are being feeling by another spiritual authority presence, that's good. Did you engage with that sense of spirituality? Like, let's say, even as a 22-year-old, when you're going through the psychology classes, were you thinking, wow, they should be talking about the spiritual, or it was more on the back burner?
No, I wasn't very, very much in the back burner. I was in a relationship also at that time with somebody who was complete atheist as well. Like, he would really be really harsh about it, even if I would say anything spiritual.
Yeah.
Like, bomb, like really slam it shut. So I was just very much in that scientific mode, which I'm really good at, by the way. I can thrive in that as well. I get that. But for me, the click came the moment that I connected both. That I realized it's not one thing. It's actually one thing. It's not two things.
How old were you when that click happened?
After my dad died.
How old were you then?
I was 26.
Wow.
27, I think,
That
2006. Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
That's really interesting. I find myself, I had a scientific, literary, conventional bent up until 26 as well, where
Oh my God.
I had a click, an awakening experience, and I remembered. No, I wouldn't have also not thought of myself as an overly spiritual person and very comfortable with the conventional world and all about it and could function perfectly well inside and out. But then at 26, I was like, wait a second, and then had the awakening. But also
Exactly.
remembered, that wasn't in here. I always had that little part of me, but it was very much on the back burner. And yeah, and so but I think it's really helpful for healers to have, then you can have the best of both worlds. If you sort of head in the
Yeah,
clouds like
absolutely.
your entire life, and there are people like that and it works, but for a lot of people, having that, being able to have both is really, really interesting. So at 26,
Yes.
so then you graduated from, you've been out of psychology school for a
Couple
little,
of years, 2 years. I right away opened my own practice because I had specialized in giftedness, gifted education, and gifted psychodiagnostics. So I right away, and there were many specialists in the Netherlands back then. Right now, it's exploded.
okay.
But back then, I think the first big meeting with specialists around giftedness, we were eight of us, and that was it. And I knew this was my thing. I wanted to do this. So I was like, I'm not going to wait around for somebody to hire me or to find a place for me to get this done. I'm like, I'm just going to start my own thing. And I did, with a lot of success. And so by then I was studying. I had been in private practice when my dad died for a year and a half when he died. And that's when actually my other gifts started being shown, when I was doing my own thing, because that's when I would be reading forms, children's forms that the parents would have submitted, and I would get so much more information just than that was on paper. And I would be just saying this to the parents, and the parents would be like, did we put that in there? And I was like, oh, no, but it's the profile, I was like, oh my God. So I realized that there was something more happening than that. I just knew things.
I've been
This
doing
was
this for a year and a half. We see patterns. It's still not
yeah,
that
yeah,
hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh no, it's the profile, it's the
yeah,
type, right?
yeah.
But they were like, the parents were like, oh, and I'm still like, a month ago, I got a messenger. Somebody found me on Facebook, and from years ago, 2007 or something, like, what you wrote on that report, like a prediction of what would happen, it happened. It was spot on.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm still, every time I'm like still blown away by that, and like really grateful that people come back to me with that, because then I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Well,
It helps.
yeah, one thing that's interesting to me is a lot of people, they have this light bulb experience, at awakening at 26, or whenever it happens, can be 46 anytime. But often they then look back on like, what was I doing beforehand? I need a complete change and shift into a new field, which is what happened for me.
Yeah,
What I was working in, it gave transferable skills, but I could not stay in that industry at all, and I had to shift. But what's interesting for you is that you're already very much in a clinical environment, and it's not that you just didn't change what you're doing, you changed the way you were doing it. And so what you were
yeah,
doing, you're doing diagnostics and supervision of children,
yeah,
instructing, teaching teachers about education, and
yeah.
working with gifted children. And so that, that was all, you could apply all of the psychological scientific stuff you've learned, but then add in different ways of doing it. And so have I
Exactly.
actually described exactly what you're doing, or can you tell us a bit more
Exactly.
about?
Well, yeah, I did also a lot of work because of the psychodiagnostics. You have to then transfer that to the schooling situation, and you have to be able to explain that to the teachers in a way that it's workable, and that the teacher can do something with what I've written, right? Like, okay, this is this child,
Yep.
this is the report, and what do we do with it? So I did a lot of that. And as I grew in my practice, I got, we started, well, I joined an initiative to create gifted schools in the Netherlands. I became the vice president of that. And in that position, I was training teachers also in giftedness and gifted education. What are the best practices for gifted children? So that's how I kind of like, I was doing a lot of different things. That's why I grew really quickly.
Yeah.
And burnt out and crashed massively by 2009.
Okay. Well, can I just back up a little bit? And so when you were doing that work with, teaching teachers, was that in just like a normal school? Were they in like private international schools? Was it?
We don't have private schools in the
So
Netherlands. Yeah.
So it was just the normal public education system then? Okay.
Yes.
Did you then create a different schooling system, like specifically for gifted children, that needs all the infrastructure and all of that set up?
So that was the idea and the hope.
Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, that's very difficult. And the Dutch are very much about being normal.
Sure.
It's very important. You
Yep.
cannot be different or try to want more. You have to be happy,
Yeah.
satisfied, and be normal.
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult, still is. And if you just Google that in the Dutch world, I'm still getting articles on my feed about how that it's a very big issue still in the Netherlands. So they don't like.
In Australia, we've got the tall poppy syndrome, if you've heard of that.
It's the same in the Netherlands.
Well, it's actually poppies, so it fits exactly. So if you put yourself up as special or higher in any way, you just get cut down, and that's a big part of the egalitarian society.
Exactly, it's the same in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
and it's a very big thing because in my work, I had never received a parent in my practice who said to me, I want my kid to be special, or I want my kid to have special treatment, or I want my kid, she's gifted. No. It was always, I want my child to be happy.
Yeah.
And my child is suffering. I've lost my child. I don't know where my child's gone. My child is suppressed. It was never about being special. It's about parents who are bound to a system.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Netherlands, homeschooling is forbidden by law. They're bound by a system, and their child is deeply, deeply unhappy. Then that is a big issue. And so we tried to create something for them. In the end, it became kind of like a school within a school, like a department within the public school that the gifted children could then apply to. But even those are closing down, and
yeah,
it's not a good. And we have a lot of gifted dropouts in the Netherlands. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very egalitarian to be led by the lowest quartile. To cater it to their needs. Is not why not have something for the highest quartile? But did you find that you were able in that system still to be able to educate teachers, and therefore it was helpful for the
reason I stopped doing this work was because I felt crushed by it, that I could not even there were. I graduated in 2004, right? Yep. And when I completely closed my practice, it was 2017.
Okay.
And in those years, nothing had changed. Nothing. Like nothing. Teachers were still graduating with zero knowledge about giftedness. They were still, it was every talk I would come to school for, it was like, something new was being said, and I was just mind blown. I was like, how? So my belief and what I've gotten back from parents, of course, is that I made a big difference on an individual level. so that the parents were heard, the child was seen. I saw them. I could see the child. I could put that on paper. Parents were felt very seen and heard. And that made a big difference on an individual level. But then I would send those parents and that child back to a system that's broken.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense. And so you did then end up, now you're the founder of the Vibrant Sensitive. So
Yeah.
has that been 10 years or so?
No,
When was that?
the Vibrant Sensitive evolved actually in 2017.
Okay.
Because I first started with the Highly Sensitive Parents group, Highly Sensitive as a movement as well. That's a really big group. And because it was like, okay, if I'm going to go online, I want to do more because I want to travel and I want to, I want to do things that are not bound to a practice. How can I combine all my talents? And that became Highly Sensitive Parents. But then, of course, all the other people, I would go into events or I would be speaker at an event, and people would go, yeah, but I'm not a parent. Can you do me too?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, and okay. So then that evolved into the Vibrant Sensitive, and that is something that as a term more that somebody who said to me, but you have something really vibrant about you.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I really like that actually. Because so many views about sensitivity are always about, that broken, shy empath.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's just not me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Like vibrations and frequencies.
Yeah,
and,
it's like it's the frequency, right? Yeah.
Exactly, which is kind of an opposite of the butterfly crushed under the mechanistic wheel, which is what education can be in a worst way. But also it must be difficult, as you're you said in 2009 you got burnt out. And so at that point you're also, you're creating a network, but then you've got employees. Then you become a manager and administrator, and you're not in there face to face just doing your healing work day to day. It's like, was that part of what the burnout?
Yeah. All of a sudden, I had 8 people that I was responsible for, and that was, you're just being a manager more than that you're actually doing the work that you love to do, and that was just not what I wanted, because I am very much about being my own boss.
Yeah. Well,
my time is mine.
Yeah. Well, another really cool thing there is you didn't just resign yourself to it. I'll just plod into work every day and take the paycheck, and this is kind of what I want to do, but not really, but I'll just pretend that it is. You were like, hey, this is not what I want. And then you had the courage to make a change. And I think that's a really important demonstration for a lot of people. A lot of people can rationalize it. Oh, it's okay. It's sort of, but to be able to say, no, this is not what I'm about. And therefore to, again, make your own way and define your terms on how you're going to do is a really important, inspiring thing for people to see.
Yeah, I think it's funny when people say that. That's very inspiring, because for me, it's like, again, it doesn't feel like I have a choice.
Yeah.
Like on a soul level, I have no choice. If I keep on going with what I'm doing, it's just going to crush me. And and my soul doesn't let me get away with anything, by the way. And my soul is very much like,
I was exactly the same. I had no choice. Like I was quite the conventional, status, money, fitting in. It was all great, but my soul was like, no, sorry, buddy. You can't have any of this. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. And so that, so you really got that feedback as well. We talk about evidence-based things. And so, and you didn't just sort of go, oh, I don't like the way this makes me feel in the first 6 months of your practice. You like stuck at it and had the ups and downs. But so ultimately the results that I'm getting are not or just the system I'm working with. There needs to be another way of doing things, and I'm going to have to create that. And so that's what you did. And so how did you go about, and what did that mean in terms of the modalities and the way that you're practicing? So there's scientific,
So I stopped. So I I burned down. I had another baby in 2009, and then another one in 2010. So that was like, what the heck are you doing in a burnout, having 2 children also? Sure, let's do it. Let's do that too. Why not? But by 2012, I was like, I needed to do something. I wanted to keep developing myself. And I kept asking myself, is this, is this soul or is this ego? Like, what is happening here? Like, who's talking now? Is it my ego saying like, you're here with a master's doing nothing with it? Or is this a calling that I need to do something and step up again? So I went and started psychotherapy. And that was not a success because she wanted to ignore all my training. And I had to start carte blanche, but I couldn't because I had my training. And basically, it turned out it was like more like a cult setting than a training. And she just crushed it. She was out to crush everything that was me. So I said, okay, I couldn't do that. I can't. Anything that's crushing me is just like, okay, step away from that. And I went in 2012, I went through that like dark night of the soul period, which was funny because if I look back at that, we could talk like Maya calendar and things like that. And it's also exactly then, October 2012. And I just went into this complete deep dive, like, what do I want? And in 2007, I had read The Intention Experiment, and that was for me the blend of the scientific and the spiritual. The Intention Experiment by Lynne McTaggart. I don't know if you know it. It's a fantastic book because it just, it was that moment that my brain and my heart just said, I was just, it wasn't right now. You can just take a picture of something and send it to people. I was scanning it and emailing it to everyone. I was like, look at this. Did you know, like that quantum field. Oh my God. And I said right there and then, in 2007, if I ever find a modality that is works with the quantum fields, that's going to be my thing. And in 2012, there I was completely lost, wandering through town. Let's go to the library. Let's see if they have an interesting book. And I see this little pamphlet there, and it says Touch of Matrix. And it's dive into the possibilities of the quantum field. And I was like, no, that cannot be true, right? And I Google it, and it even said, it talked about Lynne McTaggart's book. So I was like, this is it. So I went back and I got all the other books, and I showed it to my husband. I said to my husband, read this, right? And he was also, wow. And we had sessions and blew our minds. So on January 2nd, 2013, we started training for it. And that's how that kind of like, and it was just, wow. And even there, it was for me. I do everything first for me. It's like always that self-healing that takes place when something just resonates so with you. It's a thing that is just like, I didn't think that I was going to be doing this. I was a psychologist, right? I'm a therapist. I'm doing, I'm doing intelligence testing and I don't know, and diagnostic work. I'm not going to be doing healing. This is for me and for fun. And that's just not how it works.
Well, yeah. So much of it is about what really works. And so you did go down the conventional road of doing psychotherapy and finding it's just not for me. And that's just such a key part of any therapeutic relationship. The therapist has to make sure the modality they're doing is a match for that type of client. And if it's not a match, don't do it. Don't like continue on. I will just do 10 more sessions and see if it works. If it's you've got to know it's not working and then make an adjustment. And then if a quantum touch matrix doesn't make sense to the scientist, but it works, well then it's just whatever works really. Is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's my motto is what if it works, it works. You know, I like
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and don't keep doing it because it makes sense or it should work.
yeah, or keep at it, or everybody says that, or
Yeah,
that's what everybody does. No, look, if it's not working for you, like you have to, you know, be willing, you have to be willing to try something else, be willing to explore new things and other ways of being that might be a better fit for you.
yeah, and
It's
so
yeah,
so this is where we get to the core of what you do, which is you're
yeah,
talking about highly sensitive. So we'll get into defining what a highly sensitive is in a second.
yeah.
But for me, like that's the core. And so when you did you notice that there were, so you've got a specific client type. You're the kind of client, and psychotherapy didn't match for you, but then you really resonate with this other one. And so do you find that highly sensitives, there are specific modalities that work for them and specific modalities that don't?
I do.
Thoughts?
I do. I do. Do you want me to define high sensitivity
Oh,
first?
no, okay, I just we'll get to that next, but
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I do. I do think so. I do believe that there are modalities that work better for the highly sensitive, purely um, because there's such a part of being highly sensitive is that deep processing that takes place. So we store things so much deeper in our bodies
yeah,
that it's very difficult to just access that with the mind.
yeah,
So everything that is very mind oriented, as talk therapy usually is, it's not going to reach those areas that are completely embodied by that time by the highly sensitive.
yeah,
It just keeps going and going, and it's just stored even more because we know by now that the body keeps the score, right? You know, Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score. It's stored somewhere in your body, but the highly sensitive are even more. There's more to that.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Actually,
any modality that is more in the body
yeah,
will work better. Yeah.
yeah. I noticed you did quite a bit of hypnosis training throughout your career.
Yeah.
And so talk therapy is a bit more into the conscious mind. Do you find hypnotherapy in the subconscious, which is part of a lot of my interest? Is that one way of is that a helpful method?
Yeah, I like the subconscious part. And basically, what I find really interesting about hypnosis and why I love doing that with in combination, because I blend everything. I don't do one thing.
Yep.
I'm very eclectic in everything I do. I just take like, oh, that works there. Oh, that works. Oh, but if we blend that, right?
Yeah.
Is the deep relaxation part. We want to get people out of their minds. We want them in their body.
Yep.
And we want to just really just shut that out. Just like get out of there. We want to go in here. And even with a modality like Touch of Matrix, which can be very bodily.
Yeah.
It relaxes them more. And then they can allow the body to do what it needs to do to release what it needs to release.
Yeah.
So that's why I love just studying many techniques.
Yeah, cool. It just even as you're talking, it reminds me, you can talk to people pre-hypnosis and they're telling you this, the problems this is the problem making mind. Then you just want to go, breathe in, relax, follow this hand, do it, sleep. And it's like, now I can talk to the problem solving mind. And the conversations you have with the conscious mind versus the subconscious are so radically different and so refreshingly so that I can't, it'd drive me crazy talking to someone's conscious mind for an hour, every time. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you keep going in loops, right? And
Yeah.
then you realize, like, okay, we can keep, look, I understood it already the first 5 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
we can keep rehashing that, but it's not going to make it better. And, what you're doing is just rewiring that and reaffirming that in your system and in your body. And we actually don't want that, right? We want to the opposite. So it's interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Having said that, there are a lot of people, talk therapy and CBT, all these things, like there are a lot of people who just lack some of that conscious awareness, and they go through that and then they have their own aha moments in a conscious state. But by the time people come to me, they're well beyond that. And so I'm very much aware that I'm really, what I see of reality is filtered, and the people that are not, that do match with other modalities that I could not do, I just don't see them. And the ones that come to me are the ones who are right for me. But occasionally people will come to me and say, oh, I'm kind of curious about past lives. Maybe we could have a session. But I know that I talk to them and it's like, well, it's not a past life issue. You're not that into spirituality. Someone else told you about it. This is not for you. And I'll just refer them away to another modality. But for the people that do match, I'll say you're in the right place. And so you said something interesting. I read you said some traditional talk therapy can re-traumatize the sensitives.
Yeah.
So that it's not traditional talk therapy is bad. It's for some people, it can have a certain effect. So you can tell us about that.
Well, again, it's that deep processing aspect of high sensitivity. We know that that the sensitive system, there's a lot of research being done right now, and since 2015, much more research has been done, like on a brain level, like sensitive people under an MRI. What do we see? What is happening on a brain level with the highly sensitive? And Elaine Aron has this great book. If anybody's it's not even that intense that anybody can read it. It's Psychotherapy and the Highly Sensitive Person.
Yeah.
And she really illustrates there, and I see that myself, that a highly sensitive person traumatizes easier. So something that might not be traumatizing to a non-highly sensitive traumatizes a highly sensitive person, purely because of the sensitive system. It's not that we're more, oh, you don't have enough grit, oh, you're not resilient. That's not it. It's just that it's stored deeper in our body. Our brain has no filter. So things come in so much more as a shock to our system that then and then we go into that deep processing, and deep processing can be overthinking. What happens when we're overthinking? We are rewiring, and we are really connecting all those synapses in our brain, and it's just all those neurons are firing, and we're just going at it again. So when we're talking about talk therapy and the sensitive, what is happening then? We're going at it again and again and again. So you're actually, the body, and we know this, the body does not know, and the brain doesn't know if it's happening now, if it happened before. So we can keep talking about it. And then what is the body doing? Oh, it's just being re-traumatized.
Right. Well, one of the psychological theories is that, if you talk about and expose people to traumas or, phobias, for example, periodically, you get this desensitization effect. And so it sounds like what you're saying is like, yes, maybe for some people, but for others, it's really just.
I have the feeling that works better with phobias than with trauma.
Okay.
And in trauma, it's not about not talking about it. We can look at it, right? We can acknowledge it, and we see it, and we feel it, and then we let that go, right? It's about, let's not nitpick every little aspect of that pain. Let's not take away the scab and make it bleed again. We want to look at it. We're like, okay, that's there. That's a nice scar. Well, what happens? But we don't want to open it up again. It doesn't have to bleed again.
It's like, now we can really get into that definition. You've started already on what a highly sensitive purpose is. From what I understood, it's like 15 to 20% of the population is highly sensitive. And a lot of it, and it's at a neurological or nervous system level. So then it's like how we take in sensory data. And then it's also like how we process it. And
exactly.
So what are some of the other characteristics or definitions of
So basically, a highly sensitive person it's like the romantic definition as named by Elaine Aron, who wrote the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, but the scientific term is sensory processing sensitivity.
Okay.
It is not the same as sensory processing disorder. which because that means there's something's going wrong with your sensory processing. With high sensitivity, there's nothing going wrong. And I really like to make that very clear, because a lot of people, there's a lot of talk right now about neurodiversity. Oh my God, but is that not autism? Oh, but is that not ADHD? And it's not, yeah, you know, there are lots, and giftedness, of course, a lot of overlap. But basically, it's not a disorder.
Yeah.
And it's not a diagnosis either, by the way. Because
Yeah.
a diagnosis would mean that there's something going wrong,
Yeah.
right? It's just a spectrum of the human diversity, right?
Yeah.
So it's at 50 to 20%. So that's a very big chunk. So it's not so much. So that's why, like, when people say that, oh, that's different. No, it's 1 in 5, right?
Yeah.
And so that the processing aspect is the main characteristic. There's research had been done by the University of Brussels, and Elaine Aron has characterized in many ways, but in that research, they realized they took all those characteristics, and they examined them on a scientific level and with a lot of people, and they realized the main characteristic is the depth of processing, and that defines all the other characteristics.
Yep.
Because your emotional sensitivity, that comes from all the depth of processing, your empathic abilities that come from there. So it really, it's like that umbrella that defines all the other ones.
Yeah. And it's interesting about, knowing what it is and what it isn't. So a lot of people can think, oh, it sort of sounds like you're an introvert. And, like, for example, and it does share some of those characteristics, like, you need a lot of time on your own to recharge, and just the sensory input of being in big crowds is, I'm not your thing. So how do you know if you're a highly sensitive? So one thing I noticed, there are tests online. So if you're curious about, there's like 30 questions or something, and if you're over 15 out of, then, and so that's something, if people want to look online and think, is she talking about me?
Yeah.
Because I went and
but I want to say something about that. So that test was scientifically then tested, and it's not very valid. Okay. So that test that is online is a really nice test. It's just something that you can say, oh, that sounds familiar. That's good to start on your journey.
Right.
But it's not a scientific test. It's not scientifically validated.
Right.
There is a valid test, but it's in the University of Brussels, and you will have to go for that, for something else, for a psychologist for that. Okay. But it is a lot of things. It's 70% of the highly sensitive are introverts, 30% are not.
Yeah.
And that can be very confusing for people when they think like, yeah, but I love people. Yeah, but what happens after you've loved people? Are you loving people? Like, do you get so much energy from it and then you really can keep at it, or do you then need to recharge? Yeah. That's the question, right? You can also be like me. I'm also a sensation seeker, which is just, it's that thirst for adventure, and I love to travel, and I love to do new things, and I love to learn new things, and I'm always looking for the next new challenge. Yeah. Oh, and then I need also a lot of time to recover. Yeah. So it's always like you're like with your feet on the brake and the gas pedal at the same time, right? You're like, oh, like, okay, no. Yeah. Okay. And so a really interesting thing there is, the labeling. And so it's something that, we have to have the distinctions between what it is and isn't. But then a lot of people, you talked about, there can be misdiagnoses. Mm-hmm. And so people are labeled as one thing, but they're actually being highly sensitive makes more sense and helps them. So can you tell us a bit about, what kind of people who have that may be misdiagnosed as something else, and then that they even think of it as a disorder, whereas it isn't. It's more of just a way of being wired. So it's not about solving it, it's about working with it. Yeah, so in a lot of people don't realize that in the psychological world, if you could look at the DSM-5, they're just checklists.
Yeah.
They're checklists.
Yeah.
Like psychiatrists have never heard of high sensitivity. Psychiatrists have never heard of giftedness. It's not because they're not disorders. So it's not in their book.
Right.
So what is in their book are disorders. So
Yeah.
if you check off 5 things on that list, you'll be you have autism or you have ADHD or whatever, and right. And that's for me, that's very disturbing.
Yeah.
I have one of my friends online, which I met in person actually on a boat trip in the Dominican Republic, 2017. She's like a huge TV celebrity, psychiatrist celebrity in the US. And she's like on any talk show that need a psychiatrist. She wins awards. She had never heard of high sensitivity. I had to send her my articles. She's in my group. I mean, seriously, they have no clue.
Yeah.
And then, and a lot of people then in an online world, and I just have to like bite my tongue every time. Oh my God, finally I have my autism diagnosis. It all makes sense. And I'm looking at these people, they're not autistic. They're not. But they're very happy with the label because it gives them security and understanding, et cetera, which I get. But if they didn't put you under an MRI and they actually looked at your brain and showed me that your brain is really different, then you don't have ADHD. You don't I'm like, oh, it really disturbs me because there's really a different brain that's happening on an ADHD brain and an autistic brain and really. So for me to, so when somebody says that, I'm like, wait, can we explore something different? But if they're really attached to it, you can't go there. You cannot go there because it's an identity issue then.
Yeah.
Right? They have completely identified with their diagnosis.
Yeah.
And how dare you suggest different?
It's a complete paradigm, isn't it? You know, like people get married to their problems and they love having them and they do not want them to be removed. Like, as you say, it's an identity thing. And that's just the whole paradigm that, you know, even the kind of, you know, spiritual healing where it's a wellness paradigm, which is like how to be more well. It's not how to fix a problem.
No.
And that the whole thing's set up to, you know, diagnose problems and then fix them. You know, and if you don't do that, then what do? You know,
anybody that comes to me and says my burnout, my fibromyalgia, my cancer, my anything, I'm already, first of all,
yeah.
Not you. It's not yours. If it's yours, you can have it. It'll stay with you for as long as you want it. But if you want something different, you're going to have to really get out of that identification with your problem, because it's really gonna, you're it. You're it.
Yeah. And this is gets to the core of such spiritual reality, because if people identify with that for so long and then you take that away, then they don't know who they are. And they may find out who they are as something, you know, far greater than they ever imagined, you know, in a spiritual sense, or the ultimate self, or, you know, all of that stuff.
And but it's not it.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the benefits of past life regression, I find, is people can really fixate on the idea of, you know, myself and my trauma and my mother. And it's like, well, you know, we just did 3 past life regressions. We had 4 different mothers and you were 2 of them. So, you know, you're not, this identity of me as the wounded child, you know, you're 40 and you've been many other things, and that just how expands people's idea on what their self is. And then then coming back to the conscious reality of I am this, you know, broken thing. Well, you know, sort of, but not really, not on the bigger picture.
Exactly. And why? And the why? Why are you experiencing these things? Why? What's here to teach you? Why? What are you here to learn about this? And how can we not so overcome that or grow through that or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of just being that thing, instead of like looking at it from another perspective, like, okay, let's see what's here for me, what's the growth. And a lot of people just don't want to, because they just want to be victimized. They love being a victim. They're so attached to their pain
Mm.
that they cannot, that's why you said yourself, like, some people don't come to you for certain therapies. I love it when people come to me and they say, I've been to a therapist, I've been to the physical therapist, I've been to the chiropractor, I've been to the acupuncturist, I've been to this, and it's still, and I'm just done, and I just, please help me. And I'm like, are you ready to surrender?
Yeah.
Because that's when you can have them. That's when you realize, like, look, you've done all the normal things.
Yeah.
Let's now go completely, just let's go nuts. Let's go like completely into everything else, and
Yeah.
let's experience. But you have to be willing to go there.
Sure. When people come to me and say, I'm curious, but I haven't tried anything else, I'm like, well, go and try everything else and come back to me when you're come back to me when you're desperate,
Yeah, exactly.
you know? Then
And
you'll
people
commit,
like
you
that,
know?
that's weird.
Yeah. And most people are at that stage. I'm the therapist of last resort. By the time you do something as crazy as past lives or spirit release or something, at that point, people have tried everything else. But
Mm.
like for you, you've got that conventional basis, and maybe people will come in and just this whole paradigm of like, if you're saying, look, being highly sensitive isn't a diagnostic problem to be solved, but it is
Mm.
a way of understanding how you're wired. And so even how do you apply a therapeutic solution to something that you're saying is not a problem, but is it more about just more wellness or more insight? So how do you work with people if you
Yeah, I work with people on the awareness level. So we have to be like, first of all, how are you wired? What does that mean for you?
Yep.
And if I am, it's really all the band-aid methods, like just we just put something on a symptom and then like maybe you bleed through it or not, I you've got to go there or you're not going to go there, because it's not going to change anything in your life if you're just going to look at, I'm going to just put a little band-aid and I'm not going to look at it and then maybe you'll be okay. It's really, I work with people on the awareness level. What works for you? What's there? And what do you want to moving forward? Because we can keep looking at the past. It's not going to help you. Really not. Okay, who are you now? What do you want? And how are you going to do that? And how can you walk that, that path?
yeah
It's, because a lot of the, in a lot of the things that I see around high sensitivity, empath world, spiritual world, right? And I even write that on my website. I was like, I was breaking out in hives every time somebody would say the word self-care, because self-care, it became like this, if you just make sure you have a bath once in a while and you'll be fine, and just, make sure that you have your cup of tea every morning and you'll be fine. And that's not what self-care is. Self-care is deep awareness. It's like really, really, what do I want? What do I need? What makes me just want to jump out of bed every morning? And how can I create a life that will support that? And that's what I do. Right?
I love that. I think we're going to talk about this in the next podcast, but
Yeah.
I've got a big rant I'd go on in complete
I like
support of that.
rants. I love
Yeah.
rants.
Yeah. I also get triggered by that a little bit myself. But I think one thing, so completely on the same page. One thing's interesting though, what is even the purpose of being a highly sensitive? And I think, no, the sensitivity, the overwhelm, and even the pain that you may have by being, sensitive in a corrupt, power hungry, foolish, ignorant world to a large extent. It's not about papering over that and just sort of pretending it's not happening and just still doing the same soul crushing job or participation. It's about, really finding that life purpose. And people don't do that if they're not. So people come to me and say, I'm in a bit of pain, I'm curious and I'm in a bit of pain. I'm like, go back when you're come back when you're desperate and have more pain. You don't need less pain, you need more, because that's gonna help you awake, and it's gonna give you no choice but to do something else other than what you're doing. And a bath is not going to cut it. You're going to have to really change your life, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be scary. It's going to be all of those things, but that's what awakening, that's part of it. And if not, you're still just these people sleepwalking through their, their love of their pain identity. You're asleep, and you're willfully asleep, and part of the message is like, wake up. And if you're highly sensitive, the benefit of that is that you can't tolerate sleepwalking through and BSing yourself.
Exactly. Michael Beckwith has this little quote. He says, the pain pushes until the vision pulls. Right. And that's for me, that sums it up. And I see so many people and they're like, yeah, but I'm not there yet. I'm like, that's fine. The pain pushes until the vision pulls, right? The pain, when they're ready, when they see like everything they're doing is really not working, and denial is not working anymore, and everything else is not working, then the pain is gonna, it's just gonna crack, and then the vision is gonna pull you when you can create that. But the pain is gonna be the push for a long time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And the highly sensitives, they just awaken earlier because we just don't have that in us to keep going at that level. We just don't. We're just something is going to crash. We're going to burn out. We're going to, you would develop all these physical symptoms until okay, this is not working. This is not it. Things have to change. So yeah, the pain. And I think it's one of the most uncomfortable things for people when they realize, and even, at this level, in the work that I've been doing for so long on myself, because it always starts with me, right? There are still things that I'm not willing to look at, right? And that even this past year that I'm finally there to say, oh, I've been ignoring that because I was just not ready to go there at that phase in my life. I wasn't ready to go there with my physical body or things that I've been wanting. Now I am, right? And that's also something that we have to understand, that we have phases. And sometimes, I have a 22-year-old now, right? And I see her going through things that she knows consciously, this is not right. I can't be doing this too long, but I cannot, in this phase in my life, I have no other choice because her society is just not set up for that, right? So I'll just power through, and I'm holding that intention for her that she'll make it, right? But I understand that in that phase in her life, she cannot do those things that she sees me doing.
Yeah.
She knows consciously that I'm right. and she can see that, but she's like, I have no other choice right now. So we have to also honor those phases of our lives. And some people can, I see people going very young into the spiritual practice, for example. And then they end up not having children for, and for me, things were always like the other way around. I always did everything completely. It's like, no. Well, let's do it now. Let's have a kid now. I want it, and then, and I'll evolve through that. And other people do it completely different. So we have to kind of honor that, but at the same time, the people that really want to work with me, they know, if you have to be willing to go deep.
Yeah.
It's not about meditation. It's not about lighting the candle. It's not about the prayer. It's not about the affirmation. It's not about how, how many oracle card decks you have. I have many. but it's about what is that deep inquiry that
Yeah.
you're willing to go into and
Yeah,
step into.
I love that. On your website, you said, I don't go for shallow work. I love the deep work that comes with healing the past, transforming the now to free you for your future and the generations to come. And I was like, wow, is that on my website or yours? Like, that's exactly what I'd say. All right. And so even people come to me and they say, I want to do an exploration session for past life regression. I'm like, no, boring, shallow. Dig in. Let's find a pain to heal, and if you don't have it, come back when you do. But I'm not about exploration or curiosity, just whatever. Like, let's get into something really because that's what I can do. Other people can do that other stuff, but this is what I want to do. And so
yeah, like I can give you many websites where you can find nice meditations and people that go like really into pretty crystals. Like, fine, you can go there, but when you have something really to work with, you can come to me.
Exactly, I'm exactly the same. I love it. And so when people do work with you, I know your website as well. If you go to Karen's website, it's amazing, a lot of stuff there. And so you've got a few programs. You've got a Stop Overwhelm Now, a 2-day intensive. You've got a Vibrant Sensitivity Mentoring Program, a 3-month program, and they're having it all coaching program, 6 to 12 months. So can you tell us about some of the offerings, how you work with people, what those programs do?
Well, basically, they kind of say it pretty pretty well. I like the Stop Overwhelm is really just that deep dive, 2-day deep dive. We go into so many things that are happening in the now, right? Because a lot of people that when they're in overwhelm, in burnout moment, they just don't even see it anymore. They have no clue what's happening anymore. They're just like, it's just a big foggy brain. I've been there, right? It's a foggy brain. You don't see it. You have no idea what you can cut out. Everything is just, you want to cut everything out. But you have no clue how to make things manageable, small steps, getting things just so small that you can't fail and build from there. So the 2-day intensive is really about making it really tiny. And that's like, you need 2 days for that, you do. Because there's just so much that you have to clear before you can even just get rid of the brain fog. So it's not, but it's about getting clear. But we do, of course, do healing. We do all these things that just to relax the body and the brain first.
So what kind of modalities are you using? Are you using some like psychological principles, techniques? Are you using energy healing, hypnotherapies? What kind of stuff?
All of that. All of it.
Cool.
We just
Okay, nice.
Yeah, no, I just basically put everything in there, and it depends. It's so highly tailored to who's in front of me.
Sure.
We're not all the same. And to pretend that we have a one size fit all thing, I don't, because we're all very different. We all have different experiences, very different lives, different situations. A mother of 5 will have a very different session than a childless person.
Yeah.
Period. Even if it's just to allow the body to heal from 5 pregnancies. I mean, that alone could be a whole day.
Yeah.
Right. So that's still. But the 3 months is the 3 months of mentoring program. It's people who do have pain, but really just need like kind of like a 3-month hold my hand experience of, okay, I need to step. I understand what I'm doing, but I need somebody to just walk with me for 3 months so that we can set something up that I can move forward with. And then having it all is really when people really need more hand holding. They're doing something radically different with their life. They want to really transform it. Okay, I want a new business. I'm going to start a new business. I'm actually a new mother, and I need guidance through that in my first year, or anything that it's more like transformational that they need more support. and space for that, because it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Right? Things that my year programs are, I love working for a year with people, because that's when you see it, and that they can see also how they're changing, and how every change creates a new person within them.
Yeah.
And that each new identity then needs something different. So the person that they were at the beginning is not going to be the same person that is at the 12-month period. There'll be someone different. It's a new person.
Yeah. And the people you're working with, it sounds like we started off talking about gifted children, and then how do parents work with those children. And then, so you're talking, and you work with men and women. So this coaching program, could it even be, a 40-year-old man who doesn't have kids would still be someone you'd work with?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's why I rebranded to the Vibrant Sensitive, because it was very much so that I was working with all types of people,
Right.
and I realized, like, why would I stick with parents, right? I started with parents because it was what I knew.
Yep.
Where I could rebrand quickly, let's say.
Yeah.
And it pretty quickly evolved to like, but people are coming to me and say, but what about me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing about adult men is they used to be kids.
They're all little boys.
Exactly, most of them still are. So, and they didn't have the benefit of going through an education system that did cater for for them, and so just catch it now.
Absolutely, with any, I think you can work with I can work with everyone, right? And I mean, and I've worked with, I still work with children, by the way. I still do.
Okay.
Right now, my youngest is 10. That I'm working with, and with children, which is interesting. With children, what I mostly do is hypnotherapy.
Oh.
Yeah. Children are very much, they actually love it.
Yeah.
I did do kids hypnotherapy training in the Netherlands with Ina Ostrom.
Yeah.
She's an Omni trainer, and she was the first one to brought that the children hypnosis to the Netherlands, which I was like, yes, I found the first go.
Okay.
But children love hypnosis. They love it. And teenagers love hypnotherapy. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they don't have to talk.
Right.
They don't have to talk. And if you bring anyone who's a parent, and everyone who's worked with teenagers, and you bring a surly 13-year-old, 14-year-old to your practice, and you say, so tell me about your life.
Sure.
Oh, no.
Sure.
Right? They'll be like, I roll. Look, I'm here because my parents told me to come. I don't know what, I don't know why I have to be here. Yeah. Right? So with hypnotherapy, I do the talking most of the time, and I just ask some questions while they're in hypnosis, and they're fine with that.
Yeah.
And then as we progress, they start talking more, right? Because they realize, oh, this is not scary. Oh, this is actually really cool. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, she's not, she's pretty cool. So we'll talk. But yeah. I love doing hypnotherapy with teenagers.
Well, that's the thing. You can just at the end of it, you can say, open your eyes, and you just sort of keep, once you've got them going, I'm sure you can talk to them afterwards in a more conscious state as well. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. So I was going to ask, you're interested in NLP. You actually took some, enrolled in some of my courses on past life regression, which is, next step from hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming. And past life stuff. So, how have you found those modalities? So you use hypnotherapy. What other do you use any of those other modalities that, my audience, the Past Life Awakening Institute, they'd be interested to know about? Your thoughts on some of those or how you use them?
Yes, well, so doing Touch of Matrix, which is the modality that I'm most aligned with, which I trained in the Netherlands, we would go into past lives, but because it's a quantum field, right? You're just in that quantum space. But it wasn't very let's just say, defined.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about your training, is that you could have really clear-cut sessions around these past lives, with really clear instructions about the release, the breaking the bonds of time, which I love. And I use interchangeably sometimes in the quantum field as well, because it's just such a great suggestion. And usually people will come to me not particularly about a past life, but pretty quickly I can tell when it is. And then it's just what I would suggest. Because I don't say I just do this, I say I do energy healing.
Yeah.
Then in that intake, we can define what's happening. And I can pretty quickly tell if it's a past life issue, right?
Yeah.
Which, it comes with experience, and especially when people's like, there's like really like no reason that I would have this really weird thing, right? And it's just such a weird pattern, and I really, then you can really quickly go, okay, it might be that we're talking about a past life issue here. Are you willing to explore that? And when they're coming to me for energy healing about something that is really painful already and recurring, they're willing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so are you doing regressions to this life things already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so then so they're already familiar with hypnosis, they're familiar with regression, they're going back to an earlier time in their life. You might as well go back to an earlier time in their life before that. It's not, by the time you're there, it's not that much of a big jump.
No, it's pretty relaxed, and people,
Yeah.
I'm always so surprised when people are just so, again, as I said, willingness is a big issue. If they're willing to go there, they'll go there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's pretty easy to do when they're just ready. It's like that priming, and they're just ready. And I think that's something with any type of hypnosis, is the willingness.
Yeah.
That's why it's good when people are like, okay, you're ready for this, right? Like, okay, you've explored everything else, you're ready. Exactly. And I think it's the willingness. The willingness is the most important thing. When in hypnosis training, people always love to practice with me, because I'm like, okay, let's go, let's do it, Yeah. And they always want to like, oh, can I do you? Because I'm just like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, that's great. That's the difference between someone says, I'm ready to dip my toe in. No, I want you to be ready I want you to be ready to dive in.
Exactly. You have to be just like, okay, I'm surrendering to this process, and I'm surrendering also to your process, which is something that it's also, I've actually had to stop working with clients who were just not surrendering to the process, because they just said, they would be just like, like, well, no, or really fighting it, fighting the process of what I'm trying to get them to go into something.
Sure.
And they just don't want to.
Yeah, on your website you say you have so if you're interested in working with Karen, you can have or doing her programs, you've got give me a call and we can talk about it. But you said to make sure we have chemistry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's completely it. Like whether they're willing to do it or not, it's like the chemistry, the connection isn't like, so if I feel I don't really connect with somebody, maybe even past life regression is for them, just not with me. I'll say, it's either, past life is not for you, do CBT, or it is for you, but just not with me, because we're not vibing as much as we should be. And they'll often be, upset, or, like, oh, I thought we were vibing, but it's like, well, relatively no. And that's so important. And just even as a healer, for me to be, engaged and excited, I want to, I love every one of my clients. And if I, and I vibe with them, and I've got great chemistry, and they're awesome. And if there are people who, you're just not vibing, then it's for their benefit as well. Find someone you vibe with more. But I have to be the one that says we're not vibing at the level we should be, because I'm sensitive to it. and they're not.
Yeah.
They think that you're vibing, but yeah, like this is like, it's an okay connection, but the ideal one isn't with me, and it must be with somebody else. So go find them, take your money and spend it
Yeah,
somewhere else. And
exactly. That is so vital, because a lot of people are really just, if I'm in desperation energy
yeah,
because I'm doing this for the money,
right.
then I'm not gonna be congruent with what I'm trying to do with you.
Yeah,
And if you then fight me on something, then I'm gonna be like, oh, no, but no, look, you have to trust the process, and that means you have to trust me.
yeah,
And like, I would never take you somewhere that you can't go. I have a deep faith and trust in the processes that I facilitate.
yeah,
It's also the intention that I work in. Like, there's everything that we're gonna do. It's exactly what your soul intended. Period.
yeah,
Yeah, if you're gonna be fighting me on every point, not gonna work.
yeah,
And I have to be okay. Like I trust that what's meant for me will not pass me by.
yeah.
If you're the client for me, I'm the healer, the healer for you. And otherwise I can't work with you.
Yeah.
And you have to be in integrity with that.
Absolutely. And like, you have to be sensitive to it. You have to know that it's happening. A lot of, a healer might say, oh, I had an intake form or his first session with this person, and it didn't, I don't feel as good as I do after my other session, so I'll have a bath and make things better. No, you realize that I need to make a change, and you do the hard thing, which is to cut it. And I say fail hard, fail early. If
Oh
our
yeah.
and not let it drag on, and be really willing to do the breakup. A lot of people in relationships, they're there because neither one of them wants to be the bad guy that pulls the trigger. But for me, if it's like, hey, this relationship isn't where it needs to be, and at this time, and therefore it's not going to happen, and then but you have to be the one who knows that, and then backs it up and says it with the courage, the clarity, and the confidence to do it, and to know that that's okay. It's nothing wrong with them, because I don't have chemistry with them doesn't make them a lesser person, and they're still awesome for somebody else, just not me, and there's no problem in that.
No, there's no shame in that. Also,
Yeah,
for as a therapist and healer, we have to be so much in integrity with chemistry.
yeah,
Those frequencies matter, and I have to believe that because I have to be. I have to believe in what I'm doing too, right?
yeah,
And and that belief is going to actually form that field that I'm creating for you, that you're going to be stepping into. And if it's not there, because I don't see it, it's not really there for me, I don't see it, then I can't work with you, because I don't have that faith that I
yeah,
have to put you in that field that I want to create with you.
yeah. That's great. That's one of the reasons I like doing these podcasts, because we can express our personalities the way we think and feel. And if people watch this and they're vibing, going, "Oh yeah, exactly," if other people are like, I don't know, maybe. Well, if you make like maybe, if you're vibing on it, contact us. If not, really look for somebody else. Do more research. You're gonna have to do more work. Oh, but I found this one, so I want my work to end now, and I'll just contact one of these guys because they're like maybe. No, keep working. You got more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to tell you, but like, I want to
Yeah.
do it the easy way. Well, there are no the easy ways, but this,
No, easy, no.
well, the easy ways work for a little while until they don't, and that's why we don't want to do the shallow stuff. We want to do the deep one, because once you get it done, it really works, and it's done, for good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can then look back and say, who was that person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this ties in. This is a beautiful segue to our next. So I would want to ask you, well, tell me about the past lives that you had, and but well, I'm going to ask you that next time. And I'm also going to say, well, how do you stay congruent as a healer? And we've already given part one of that answer, but then part two, how do you walk the talk? How do you what is real self-care beyond putting a band-aid on? what is the real self-care and the real healing that you've had to do in your life. What are the real, depression, soul crushing areas that you're in? And we've talked about that a little bit. I was in a system, and there were rules and there's government regulations, and I had to make my own way. But there are lots of other ways you've had to make your own way and really design your own life. And you're just about to go on a pilgrimage walk, kind of like Paulo Coelho, like pilgrimage, going through like it's in Portugal or Spain, or you're about. So tell us about that. Or what are you about to do? And then you'll give us the full story next time. So give us the teaser.
Yes. So I'm going to do a pilgrimage. It's the Camino de Santiago, but it's the coastal Senda Litoral. It leads from Porto to Santiago de Compostela. It's around 300 kilometers. It's not that bad. It's the time that I have now. One day I'll do the big one. I know it. But then it's when my kids are out of the house and grown and everything. But now I got 2 weeks to walk those 300 kilometers. And I'm really excited about that. It's something that I've always wanted to do. I have this belief that I want to transform through it, and that I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I've never done anything that's physically challenging.
Yeah.
Like this, and I want to experience all the things that it does on a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. I want to all those levels, and that something like this, that it's not just like a one-day thing. No, I want to do the hard things. I can do that, and I'm going to do it.
Beautiful. So it really is a spiritual pilgrimage.
It is, because it touches you on so many levels, and I think when we do things like this that are, it's not just the physical aspect.
Yeah.
But what are you telling yourself?
Yeah.
When you're doing these things? What is your mind doing, and what kind of emotions are you processing? What kind of inspiration comes through, because you're taking this time for you to create that space to just be with your thoughts for those days, and what the people you meet, the encounters, the conversations, everybody that's on your path is like a little messenger, a little guide. I mean, that's the intentions that I'll be walking with. Like, everyone I meet is a master, right?
Wow.
And to be in that space of noticing, just noticing, like, look at this, oh my God, just opening all my senses completely. Because of course, we're always in shutdown because there's only so much we can do. But when you can actually be in a space, okay, I can open all my senses, I'm safe, and I'm going to experience everything that can come to me through these 14 days as I just walk.
Yeah.
That is, for me, it's just like,
yeah, that's so cool. I love, people can do spiritual practice, like, I'm going to go on a yoga retreat or a meditation. I'm just going to be in the hall, and I'll be comfortable and safe, and I'll have my nice mat or my nice shawl, and everything be fine. But one thing about meditating in Thailand is you sit for an hour, then you walk for an hour. So walking meditation is so big over there, or in Thailand, and so the idea that you meditate sitting, the meditative walking is such a big part of the practice. And also I love the fact that, a lot of spiritual people like us, we're not that into physical sports, this kind of stuff, but to say, no, I'm going to push myself and I'm going to do like a real walk. So I was going to ask you, like, are you into trekking and hiking? Like, no, the very fact that I'm not is what makes it spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not into anything that is extreme. I'm very much not. It's actually kind of like even like a thing for me. Like, why would I suffer like that?
Like to do that anyway and learn from it and get outside of, myself is a non-sporty physical self, but then, well, that's a limited version, and you're going to, you'll wait to an expansive version. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I leave it's what is today? It's now Tuesday. I leave Monday, so it's in 6 days. Yeah.
Okay. Well, even
Yeah.
just to tie a bow on it, just talking about, being highly sensitive. And I think if we're
Mm,
highly sensitive in the modern world in the city and you walk around, with your senses all open to that, like you can't do it. But if you're in nature and there's actual
yeah.
quietness and there's actual trees living and breathing and photosynthesizing and birds, and so it's a disadvantage to be highly sensitive in a real extreme modern world, but it's an advantage when you're really in nature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't do cities. I don't do cities. I
But
live right now. I'm in the hills of Portugal. I'm like, yeah,
okay, cool.
completely in my bliss. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast this time.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
yeah, I really look forward to, finding out. So you are in Portugal. I know that you've lived in the Netherlands, the Dominican Republic. You've got such an interesting life history. Your life history is going to stay interesting as you make it so in the next month. So I really look forward to, have a great trip, and I really look forward to talking to you afterwards.
Thank you. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to being here and telling you all about it.
Cool. So yeah. So once again, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Great to see you. See you next time.
Bye.
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 If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training in hypnosis or hypnotherapy or regression to this life, past lives, between lives, or spirit releasement therapy, then visit my website, thepastlifeawakeninginstitute.com, for details. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and see you next time.